Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. You're here today, hopefully because you're interested in learning more about how to prioritize your tasks and emails in a more effective manner so that you can essentially be more productive, more effective, and hopefully have a better time on the holidays, right? I do want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so we'll be sharing the recording with you afterwards. And then the second thing is that in the chat section here of the Teams webinar application, you can send messages. And so if you have any questions, please send me a message there and I'll take a look at them and I'll try my best to answer those questions right after my presentation. Again, this will be an introduction to Matrix. My goals are pretty simple. Let me go ahead and proceed here. I want to make sure that, when you walk away from this webinar, you get a good understanding on the basics of Matrix, and then also provide you a framework for you to get the most out of Matrix with the least work. And what I mean by that is show you the features that I think are most powerful, and that'll give you the 20% of the features, that'll give you 80% of the value. And that's the whole goal of this, which is if you're using Matrix, hopefully you're able to get all those tasks and all those priorities out of your brain onto something that's tangible, and then ensuring that everyone's working on the right things. And then lastly, the last goal is to help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. Over the years, I've talked to thousands of customers, and so I've seen every challenge that's sort of imaginable when it comes to productivity. There's a couple of challenges I want to highlight, which is the ones that we see most often with our customers, which is one, team members have trouble understanding what's priority right now. And what I mean by that is that, more often than not, teams are not able to understand exactly what everyone else is working on. So if you have trouble understanding what you're working on, how will others know what your priorities are? And then vice versa. The second challenge is that it's getting harder to keep track on the status of work across so many projects and areas of responsibilities. So more so than before, we have more things on our plate. And so because of that, how do you decide what to work on today at this moment in time? Is it going to be project A? Is it going to be project B? What about the things that are further out? So prioritizing tasks is becoming increasingly difficult. And then lastly, a challenge that I see recurring over and over again, and probably the number one reason why people come to Matrix, is that all these applications that you have and then emails and meetings is just causing far too much context switching. And then the corollary to that is actually people are having a hard time prioritizing emails. If you're like me, I get a couple hundred emails per day. And so because of that, it becomes very, very challenging to decide, what do I need to answer? And what about the emails that I can't answer at this moment in time, but I have to answer in a few weeks or in a month or something like that? And so this context switching also happens because we're using so many applications at the same time. You're using Microsoft Teams to chat with each other. You're trying to do work in some other software application. And then at the same time, you're trying to figure out, how do I decide what I need to work on, right? And so switching between all those applications just causes your brain to do so much processing. And I'd struggle with this regardless of, what applications I use. I struggle with this on a constant basis. So let's step back for a second to tell you what Matrix is. So if you're not familiar yet with what the basic application is, it's a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct more efficient meetings, and get real-time status on critical projects and priorities. So how does Matrix help with these three challenges that I mentioned? First, we use what's called the 4-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. And so I'll go into the details how we approach with this 4-quadrant methodology to show you sort of the framework behind how Matrix operate. And then secondly, we provide different views that's contextual. And so the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline, all helps you understand what needs to be done within the right context of your work. So if you're working with a coworker, you would want to know, okay, what are the things I owe this particular person in terms of deliverable, right? Or if you're working with especially in like a matrix organization, when you have multiple people that you're reporting to or collaborate with, becomes more and more important to be able to switch context and understand your priorities there. And then with respect to emails and meetings, Party Matrix provide probably the deepest integrations into the Microsoft Teams and Outlook ecosystem. And so what we're able to do is actually help you turn these emails into tasks and prioritize them within the bigger picture, right? Within all the things you have to do. So this is probably the number one reason, again, why customers come to Party Matrix, because they need help with that email prioritization. And we're just getting lost if you don't have a methodology around ensuring that the most important emails are responded to. So what makes Party Matrix better than a lot of the other solutions out there? I assume that if you're looking at Party Matrix, you probably looked at 1,000 other task management application. And that's the funny thing, which is there are so many software applications out there that tries to solve the same problem, but it remains extremely difficult to actually get one that works well for your particular needs. So my goal again today is to ensure that I can show you enough of Party Matrix to get you excited around that. But there's a couple things that makes us better than other solutions as well, which is one, we're Microsoft 365 security certified across Outlook, Teams, and web app. And we're the only application on the Microsoft ecosystem that has that certification. One of the areas that we're actually really invested in is actually using AI to help you tackle specific use cases. This is one thing I want to bring up again for the webinar participants who are here and also those who are watching this afterwards, which is if you have specific challenges that you're trying to tackle with Party Matrix when it comes to prioritizing and then when it comes to creating projects and so forth, reach out to us. We want to help you actually create these projects so then they're actually fulfilling your goals. It's ironic because, right now it's at a stage where there's still a lot of hand-holding left in the AI space. And so what we want to do is we want to invest our time and effort to make sure that you're productive and you're effective for your specific job function in your specific organization. So that's our goal there. So I want to keep you make sure that you're aware of that. So reach out to us, please. And then we provide what's called people-centric collaboration. So it's not just about projects, it's about people, right? What are the things you have to do for a certain person, for your manager, for your coworker? And then finally, Party Matrix is available as a SaaS solution, which is what I'll be presenting today, which is just a standard software as a service. And then we have a HIPAA compliant version for healthcare, life sciences, and an Azure government cloud that's used by state and local governments. And finally, a managed private Azure deployments for enterprise customers. So if you're interested in anything aside from the SaaS, please reach out to us as well. So then what makes Party Matrix effective? First of all, what it does is it helps you determine what needs to be done now, what needs to be done later, and what you need to delegate or just get somebody else to do for you. And then the second part is priorities are constantly shifting. So I imagine that, if you're thinking about the things you have to do today versus what you thought you should have done last week, for example, I bet you that list is not always overlapping. There are some overlaps, but there's probably also changes because all these projects that we're working on or the client needs change and so forth. But what happens is that Party Matrix provide one central place where everyone within your organization or within your team can come to and realize and look at and identify what are the things that are most important at this moment in time. So that's what I want you to envision for a second, which is imagine right now if you had one central place where you can see everyone's priorities within your organization. Imagine that for a second. And if you can see how that might be valuable, that's exactly the purpose of Party Matrix, and that's how we help on a team basis. But on an individual basis, what we do is we help you understand what are the things you need to work on. And so that's the core Party Matrix. And so hopefully all the features I show you today help you actually work towards that goal. And so if you find that you're not using Party Matrix towards those purposes, then, rethink about how you're approaching using the software. So let's start with the fundamental behind Party Matrix. So this is a quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And what I really like about this quote is that it takes the things that we have to do and breaks it into these two dimensions of importance and urgency. Here's the deal. A lot of us have task lists, right? These are the things I have to do. And so what happens when you do your task list? You start writing, you start at the top, you go to the middle, then you go to the bottom. And now when you have to add something, what do? You add to the top or the bottom of the list. So then how do you decide what you work on, right? Again, do you start at the top or you start at the bottom? But what's really interesting is that all these tasks that we've just created are not equal. They're not equal to each other in terms of helping us fulfill our goal. So instead of having a list, what we want to do is we look at each of those action items that we have and then say, is this important? And is this urgent? And what happens is when you start doing that, you actually end up with essentially 4 buckets of things, right? The tasks that are important and urgent, the tasks that are important but not urgent, the tasks that are not urgent, I'm sorry, not important but urgent, and then the tasks that are not important and not urgent. And so then imagine if all the things you have to do was actually written down and broken down into those different buckets. One thing that's really nice is that you know exactly where you should focus your time. So the way it works with Matrix is we just simply take that and make it digital. And so all these tasks that you have to do, instead of having one long list, right, that again, you've probably seen in your to-do list application and so forth, what we do is we ask you to actually break it into these 4 buckets. And so the important and urgent is what we call the do now. The important but not urgent is the stuff that we want to plan for. And then the not important but urgent is something that perhaps we can delegate to others. And then finally, you should not have a single thing that's not important and not urgent, because that you should get rid of that completely. And so instead, quadrant 4 is what we call the inbox. Essentially, these are the things that you haven't decided yet on how they've where they fit within the bigger picture. So now imagine for a moment that if you took everything you had to do and you put it into this matrix, it is so easy to visualize where you should be spending your time and effort at any moment in time, which is quadrant 1. Now, here's the ironic thing, which is if you're only spending time in quadrant 1, it means you're constantly fighting fires because everything's important and urgent, right? In that case. And so as you use Matrix more, your quadrant 1 should be shrinking and your quadrant 2 should be expanding. So what that means is that you're actually planning for the future. You're actually working on the right things. And so this is an insight I gained from talking to a very sophisticated customer and learning that, you know what, how we spend our time is extremely important. How we prioritize our time is extremely important, especially if we have so many things going on. So now let me ask you the second question. Imagine if you took this matrix that you've just written down with all the tasks that you have to do, right? And you walk around the office and you start comparing notes. And what I mean by that is ask all your coworkers to follow the same exercise. Write down the things they have to do, categorize them into these buckets, and then start comparing notes. And that's where the magic happens with Matrix. So what happens is that Matrix forces you to actually make the hard decisions of prioritizing all these tasks. And because of that, you actually achieve alignment so much more quickly. The worst thing, in my opinion, that we can do with our time is work so hard on something that ends up not being important at all. That is wasted effort. That is wasted energy, wasted resources. And so in some ways, working on the wrong things is far worse than not doing anything at all, right? Because you'd rather have that time to relax or take a vacation or something instead. And so what Matrix does, it creates that alignment because it allows you to have a really deep conversation with your coworkers on, hey, am I working on the right things or not? And if not, what should I be working on? And then similarly, if you have people reporting to you, wouldn't you want to know what they think is important? Because what if that's misaligned with what you have? And so that's one of those things where I can't emphasize enough. If you're using Matrix, I hope you will have these hard conversations with your coworkers. And so what's really interesting is that success from using Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on, right? It's about discovering disagreements on when something should be a priority, but when it isn't. Because if you walk around the office and everyone within your team and your organization completely 100% agree with all of the tasks that each person has, that's amazing. That's a rare unicorn. And you're one of the very, very few, if only, organization that would have managed to achieve that. But what my argument is that you will find disagreement. And the moment you find one disagreement, then Party Matrix will have added value to your team and your organization. So as you use Party Matrix more and more, hopefully you have those good conversations and identify those misalignment and priorities. Just a side note, one of the success stories that I've seen, or one of the best practices I've seen with some customers, is that what they do is they project Party Matrix onto the big screen. So when you have your meeting in the office, right, the team leader or whoever is driving the meeting can literally plug in their computer into the projector and show the Protomatrix on the big screen, and now you can have a conversation around it. And so how many times have you been to a meeting and you have an agenda, and then you're going through a couple of things, and then you run out of time, and then you realize the most important things were never discussed because you ran out of time, because you went down the rabbit hole for something that's completely not important at all. And so the whole idea with Protomatrix is then it shows you the priority. So when you go down and you're talking about your meeting stuff, you look at the quadrant 1, make sure that you fight all those fires. And then you look at the quadrant 2, make sure you're planning for the things that's further out. So I hope you get to do that as an exercise. And I hope that at the very least, when you walk away from today's webinar, even if you've never used Protomatrix as a software, that you follow some of these guidelines that we've created. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to show you the actual product itself and walk you through that. I do want to mention that the webinars like this one are recorded and posted on our website, affluence.com/webinars. There, we also have a couple of recordings that's actually recent, which is I did a webinar on email management masterclass. So if you are really interested in prioritizing your emails, check out that webinar. It's actually it's pretty helpful in terms of showing you all the ways in which you can prioritize emails, whether you're using Outlook or Gmail or any other application. And then the other thing too is I want to, again, hear from you regarding how you use Party Matrix and the challenges you're trying to tackle with Party Matrix. So if you have feedback there, please share with us. We want to hear from you, good or bad. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the product itself. Now, as I mentioned in the chat section, if you have any questions whatsoever, please send them there. And then right after I do finish up my presentation, I'll try to answer them. Okay, so now I have Protomatrix web application open on my screen. And so you should be able to see my screen here. Now look at this, front and center is the 4 quadrants. And so that's how it works in Protomatrix. Everything that you have to, every task that you create within a project has to go within one of these matrices, one of these quadrants within the matrix. Now, obviously there's a lot of applications out there that have lists and so forth, or calendar based, but the philosophy behind Party Matrix is on these quadrants, and so that's why it's so front and center for us. So here I have a project selected. So the project is called My Personal Priorities, and then I have my do now, do later, delegate, and inbox. So if I want to create a task in Party Matrix, it's very, very straightforward. Let's just say I want to say follow up with webinar participants, okay? But then I'm going to go ahead and say due tomorrow 2 p.m. So this is how I'm creating a task inside Party Matrix. And so when I do that and I click add, guess what happens? On the right-hand side, the item details opens. And so what the item details, it's a place for you to actually add additional information on the task itself. So for example, because this is open, here's the task name. If I need to edit the task name, I can do it here. What I can also do is I can star the task. So what starring does is it actually adds a layer of prioritization to the things I have, and it pops it to the top of the list within a quadrant. And then I can click on add icon here, and then I can choose an icon. So since it's related to email, I'll just go ahead and choose the email icon. It's a way to visualize the type of task that I have. Both of those are not required. As you can see, you can just have a task without those additional information, but in some cases, it might be relevant to add those metadata. And then below that, you have owner. So what happens is, because I created the task, I'm the default owner for it. But if I want to actually delegate to somebody else, I can do that directly from here. So I can delegate to a coworker very easily with Party Matrix. And then I get added as a follower whenever I delegate to somebody else. So what that means is that when this task gets updated, I'll get notifications around it. And then next to that, you have progress, effort, reminder, and dates. So as you can see, because I said due tomorrow, 2 p.m., our system automatically interpreted that for me. So Matrix use what's called natural language. And so if you say due tomorrow, 2 p.m., the system realizes, okay, tomorrow's December 21st at 2 p.m. my local time, and sets that due date for me. This is tremendously helpful. So in terms of best practices, this is one of those features where I actually highly recommend that you do. Every task in your Matrix should have a due date. And the reason I say that is because if you want to understand whether something is urgent, right, you need the dimension of time. When you have time, then you can go, when you have a time set, then you can go and see, okay, where does it fit within the bigger picture? How do I decide what I need to work on and so forth? So I always set due dates on my important task. I can always change a due date, but by having due dates, I can actually see it within the bigger picture. And here's a difference between reminders and due dates. So when you set something that's due, let's say due in 2 weeks, but if that task will take you a couple of days to do and you wait for 2 weeks to get started, that's not going to work. So reminder is a way to actually get you notified that you should get started on this task. And so I like to describe, like some use cases, like for example, if you have to work on taxes, right? So imagine if April 15th comes and you have the due date for April 15th, that's when it's due. But if you wait to April 15th to get your taxes done, that's not going to work. So maybe what you want to do is you want to set a reminder a month prior to ensure that you actually get started on that. The same thing applies to when I want to follow up with the customer in a year. What I'll do is I'll set a due date in 1 year, and then I'll set a reminder in 11 months. But with Matrix, you can actually set what's called recurring reminder too. So then I'm going to go ahead and say, remind me daily. And so the way it works here is, again, it uses natural language. And when I type remind me daily, what's happening is actually Matrix will send me a daily reminder to ensure that I finish this task. So I want to pause for a moment for you to envision what it may look like within your own use case. Imagine if you need to delegate a task to a coworker, and this task is important, obviously. That's why you're putting in Matrix, right? And so you create this task for your coworker. You set a due date for Monday, next Monday. But then you want to make sure that your coworker is aware of it. And so if they ever forget, they should get notification. So then what you do is you set a daily reminder. So when you set a reminder, this is a reminder for myself, but what you can do instead is you can also do remind everybody daily. So now your coworker will also get daily reminders to ensure that they get this done. So if you're working on something that's really critical, this is how you sort of cheat the system. And so the reason I say that is this. What are urgent tasks? Those are the things that just happen to be top of mind, or those are the things that are sort of last in, right? And so let me give you an example. In the morning, first thing you do, you open your phone, you check your email. And guess what? What do you see first? You see the last email that came in, right? You didn't see the most important email. You see the last email that came in. And so what happens is that we end up just being pulled into doing things that are actually not necessarily important, but just because they're at the top of the list. And so by using the Matrix reminder system, what it does is it essentially it hacks the system so that it goes and actually send you those daily reminders, so then you can ensure that you're actually aware of these important tasks that you have to do. So for me personally, again, going back to my own use case, I love setting due dates and I love setting reminders, and I love setting recurring reminders, especially for anything that's important. And so it always pops up to the top of my list until I get it done. Okay, so I do recommend that. Down below that, I have the chat section. As you can see, the chat section is just a place where you can actually have communication back and forth with your coworkers on this task. It also serves as a place for you to send these commands, and then also as a place for you to actually have a record of all the changes in Matrix. So the record keeping in Matrix is extremely powerful, because there's a big difference between, starting a task or creating a task and then marking as done, versus in a year, and you need to review all those tasks and you need to understand who made what decisions, when was it done on time or behind schedule, and so forth. So Matrix keep a record of all that for you automatically. So right now, when you first use Matrix, may not seem that useful, But what's neat is that a year from now, when you're looking back, you'll realize, oh, wow, I can see that, my coworker worked on this task, got it done at this time. And then if someone else needs to come in and investigate, they can actually look at that very easily. And next, I have notes. So the notes section is just a place where you can add additional details around the task. And this is also where you can add subtasks as well as bullets. It is not intended to be rich text. If you want rich text, use your Microsoft Word or Google Docs or whatever, and you can link it to Matrix. But this is intended just to create some additional information for the people who are looking at this task. And then lastly, you have the resources section, which is where you can actually upload files, documents related to the task itself, or emails. And so we'll really go into emails because I think, again, that's where, you want to go and be able to prioritize email or delegate emails. Matrix allows you to attach emails as files and documents in here. And then, of course, Matrix allows you to link any item together. And so every item in Matrix has a link. So when you link them together, you can actually, for example, choose another item here, and then you can actually create dependencies such as block by or blocks, etc. So in order to build out entire timeline for your task. So that's the basics of the item details. Now, there's a lot of features in here. So again, let me highlight the features that I think you should always use with all your tasks. Due dates, reminders, star. Okay, so anything that's important, set a star, set a due date, set reminders, and of course, obviously, if it belongs to somebody, you should delegate to the appropriate person. So from here, let's say because I created that task here in Matrix, and you see how easy it is for me to create tasks. In fact, with Matrix, I can actually just go and type a bunch of tasks very, very rapidly. But I added a task in quadrant 4, but if I really wanted to make sure that I work on it, maybe I can just drag it to quadrant 1. So everything is drag and drop. And then the other thing too is as you have more and more tasks within these different quadrants, Matrix allows you to go and focus on specific quadrant by resizing the quadrants so then you can see, okay, what are the things I should work on at any point in time. And then within the quadrant itself, now let me step back and actually show you essentially the concept of projects, right? So now we understand what tasks are. Let's say what are projects. So in my demo account here, I have several dozen projects. In my real Matrix account, I have several hundred, something like 300 projects. So Matrix is designed to be able to handle extraordinary amount of tasks and projects. And I don't actually get lost in that because of the way the notification system works and the way that I set due dates and so forth. So I want you to feel assured that if you use Matrix, it grows with you in terms of capabilities and functionality. But on the left-hand side here, I can actually go ahead and create a project. So I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and create a project. And when I create a project, I have a couple of options. I can create a blank project. Okay, so when I choose a blank project, I literally just type the project name, and then I can actually choose a color. So I'll just do my test project. Okay, now I'll go ahead and choose a color, and I'll click add. And so as you can see, I can add a project very easily. The colors here, the quadrant names are here. And now what happens is I can click on this little eye icon and it's called edit project. And what happens on the right-hand side, the project details shows. So earlier we saw item details. Now project details is where you can add information around the project itself. So for example, I can name a project, I can rename a project, I can star the project. So what starring a project does is it actually pops it to the top of my list of projects here. So imagine if you are working on so many different projects, but you have a few that's top of mind right now, just star those and they pop to the top of the list. And so you're able to jump to those projects really easily. And then the rest are actually sort of lower down the list. And of course, you can always archive projects and so forth. And then below that, you have members. So what this means is that these are the people who are in this project. So when I created this project initially, only myself was in it, right? But then you can go and say, okay, you know what, I need so-and-so person on this project. And when you add them to this, they have full access to the project. And that's the goal of Matrix, which is being able to share your priority matrix very easily with coworkers. So here's one piece of advice. If you're inside Matrix and you have a team that you work with all the time and you're working on various critical projects, create a project for each of those key initiatives and then create a project for your entire team. And then invite the appropriate people to those projects. So then when others log into their Party Matrix and they go to these various projects, everyone's on the same page. That's the goal, right? And so if you don't write it down into Party Matrix, how will you create alignment? And so that's the most important thing here, which is make sure that you have the appropriate people within the Party Matrix project so then they can see your priorities and then you can see their priorities. And then as you scroll down further, one thing I want to emphasize is that actually, despite me showing you the Eisenhower Matrix, Party Matrix is 100% customizable when it comes to quadrant names and colors. So you see here, I have the do now, but what if I want to, instead of calling do now, I want to call fires, right? And so I can actually change the quadrant names directly from my project details. And then maybe instead of delegate, I'm going to call this resources, resources and files. Okay, so I just want to change the quadrant name. And the reason I might want to change a quadrant name is that maybe I find some quadrant to be redundant, or my organization works in some ways where I want to use a certain terminology, or I want to use a Party Matrix project for managing RFPs or quote or work for my external client or something like that. So imagine if you're a contractor, and as a contractor, you have a bunch of different tasks that you have to do. There's no such thing as non-urgent or non-important tasks, right? So instead of having that section, instead you're using resources and files to track documents or pictures or anything along those lines, invoices, etc. So Party Matrix allows you to customize these quadrant names so then they fit within your needs. And so that's how you can actually modify each of these quadrants. The other thing too, though, is that once you've done the customization, you can actually go up here and then you can save that project as a template. So what that does is that once you have sort of your own terminology and color choices, you can save it as a template. So then when you launch a new project with Party Matrix, you can actually choose from one of your existing templates instead. Okay, so here, let me jump to another project. And so you can see I have another sample project here, my team priorities. Here I have another person within this project. They can see all these priorities. I have a couple of tasks. What I can do in Party Matrix 2 is actually I can change views. So for example, I have the quadrant view here, but I can change over to the list view. What I like about the list view is it's very easy for me to see the tasks that are overdue. When I go to here, I can see all my overdue tasks. They're red, very easy for me to spot them and actually ensure that I work on them. Or I can switch over to the calendar view, which of course, all the tasks that have due dates actually show up here. And then I can actually just drag and drop tasks in order to reprioritize them. Or of course, I can open the tasks themselves. And then of course, I have the timeline view, which is sort of like a Gantt chart for those that are familiar. So Party Matrix allows you to create dependencies. And if you do, then they're linked together. But if not, it actually just shows up here as part of your timeline. So if you need to go and work on a project that spans across multiple months, the timeline view is pretty helpful just to see the bigger picture. So now let's switch gear a little bit and talk about emails. As mentioned, emails is just, we just get too many emails. And so with Party Matrix, what you're able to do is the following. Let's just say if you get an email, okay, so I'll show you an example here. Let's just say you get an email from a client and the client asks you to do something that's very important, but you're not able to do at this moment in time. But you want to make sure that you actually answer that email in a week or something like that. So what do? How do you do today? Right? That's my question to you. What do you do? Like if you're like most of us, what you do is you flag the email. And then, which is great, but if you have more than 5 flags emails, it becomes really overwhelming real quickly. And that's a problem I have, which is I have hundreds of flags emails. So it becomes very challenging to make sure that I'm working on the right, and that actually answer those emails that are important. So with Party Matrix, I'm able to convert any email into a task. So if you go to Outlook, which is what I have here, and you go to the App Store, you can search, click on Add Apps and search for Party Matrix. And then if you, since I already have it installed here, I can actually choose Party Matrix, and I have 2 options. I can prioritize email, which if I do, the right panel opens up, which allows me to convert any email into a task. And so you can see here, I have the option to capture this email. Some basic information is already pre-filled, but I can actually customize this. I can change the name of the task. I can change what project it goes in, right? So for example, let's just say, my test project, that's a project I created earlier, and then I can choose what quadrant it goes in. Let's say this email is very important and urgent. I can put it there, and then I can assign it to a person directly from here as well, okay? And then of course I can set a due date. So then I can go in and set a due date, and then I'll just click capture email. So what that does is actually just convert that email into a task. And so now on the right-hand side, this is now the item details, just like what you saw in the web app. And so from here, I can assign it to people, I can set reminders, I can set due dates. So instead of just flagging an email and then hoping that you remember to go back to it, Matrix allows you to convert that email into a task and then add all the bells and whistles required for prioritization. Because now, imagine if you have 50 emails, you can actually prioritize them within the matrix itself to see the emails that are important and urgent, the emails that are for planning and so forth. This is really useful when you have an email that's like multiple months out, right? So again, I have follow-ups that I want to do within like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or so on, where I just can't flag it. It's just not viable. And so by prioritizing them in the appropriate project and setting the due date and reminder, I always get back to my emails. And so hopefully this is a challenge that if you have with email prioritization, this will really help you. And it's as simple as that, how you convert an email into a task. But here's the neat thing about Matrix, which is we're the only application that I'm aware of that actually allows you to attach emails to existing tasks too. So if I go back to this Matrix app extension, instead of prioritizing emails, I choose Open Matrix. What this allows me to do is actually I can take an email and attach it to an existing Matrix task. The use case here is the following. Imagine if you have a customer that sends you an email. You prioritize that email already, right? And then they send you a follow-up. Well, instead of creating another task, you might want to attach that task into the email, that email into the task that you already have, because you might have other coworkers who are looking at that same task, they're working on it, but they need to be aware of all the changes that's happening. So that's a really neat capability. All you have to do is search for the existing Matrix task and then choose attach. And so what that does is attaches this email to that task. So let's see what happens when you do that. So I'll go back to my test project here. You see how this email was what I prioritized from Outlook. And if you look at this task, look, the information is here. This is the subject. Some of the notes from the emails here. But in the resources section, there's the email file. So with the email file, your coworker can actually open this email document and respond to the customer. And if you go to affluence.com/downloads, you can actually download our native desktop applications for Mac and Windows. And if you do, when you open these email files, we give you the option to actually open it in Outlook itself. So then you can actually respond to the email directly. So it's a pretty neat capabilities. Otherwise, if you're using the web app, we would just download it. So that's how email integration works. Matrix is very, very straightforward when it comes to email prioritization. How I use it, by the way, what I like to use email prioritization for is to ensure that when I have something that's important, I know to get back to it. So when I'm on the road, when I'm out and about, what I do is actually I open my email in Apple Mail, which we don't have an integration for, but what I can do is I can forward the email into my Matrix inbox. And so when you use Matrix, you also have what's called an inbox address. And so this is your email, your inbox address, email address. And so what you do is you just save that as a contact on your phone. And then when you have an email that comes in and you're out and about, in the field or at a, not at the office, you can actually just forward your email into your Matrix. Okay. So now I'm going to switch gear a little bit and let's talk about beyond the managing of projects and beyond creating tasks. If you look on the right-hand side here, there's a couple of different views that we have, but the most important one is the home view. So when you click on the home view, what happens is this is where you get alerts. And so you can think of alerts as the things that require your attention. So we talk about setting due dates, we talk about setting reminders and so forth. The alert section is where it reminds you to actually work on those things. So if you set an email and you set the due date in 2 weeks and you're setting daily reminder, well, on a daily basis, it'll pop up here in the alert section. So then it ensures that you're actually working on it. So then your goal, every single day, then your goal is to go to the alert section and actually look through alerts to make sure that you're actually answering, or responding to these these task alerts or marking them as done or responding to those emails. Because if you don't, then you're not going to work on those important tasks. And then similarly, if you work on a team, make sure that your coworkers are also looking at their alerts. When you assign someone a task, it will show up in their alerts. When someone assigns you a task, it will show up in your alerts. When you have these reminders, it'll pop up in the alerts. And so for me, this is where I start my day. Whenever I open Matrix, I go to the alert section to see what are the things that are relevant to me. And then when I'm all done, I just clear all notifications. And now I'm on a blank slate. And then when I look at it again, I know what are the changes that are relevant. And then, of course, Matrix has a bunch of other views that I didn't go into details. So, for example, the agenda view shows me the things that I have to work on a daily basis, or see all my tasks across all of my Matrix. So now I'm going to switch gear and go over to the Microsoft Teams application. So if you use Microsoft Teams, I highly recommend installing Matrix for Teams. So we're probably the most integrated solution in Teams. And to get to Matrix, you simply have to go to the App Store, search for Matrix. Then when you open Matrix, make sure you pin it here on the left-hand side. What I like about using Matrix inside Teams is I have to switch contexts far less often. So because I have the application pinned here, you see how when I open it, I get the same thing as the web app. So instead of having to open, the browser and all that, I can actually just jump back and forth between Matrix and my Teams application without, with a lot fewer clicks. So as you can see, I still see all my projects, everything that I have synced here, all those emails I talked about synced here. The only difference is, the home view is now at the top as opposed to on the left-hand side. But there's a couple of features inside Teams that makes Matrix unique. So for example, if you use Teams and you go to a chat with somebody, one of the things you can do is open what's called the one-on-one. What the one-on-one does is it actually shows you all the tasks you have in common with somebody across your entire Matrix. So this is an integration that we have within Teams that provides what I call people-centric collaboration. So when you work with your manager, for example, and you want to see, okay, what are all the things that my manager assigned me? Instead of having to go to Matrix and open it, you just go to the one-on-one, select your manager here, and then you'll see all the tasks that person assigned you. And then vice versa, if you have multiple people that are reporting to you, you can go to each person, open their one-on-one, and see all the tasks that you've delegated to them. And so Matrix takes all of your projects, all the tasks you have across all your projects, and bring it into one single view. And it's people-centric as opposed to project-centric. It saves so much time and effort having to dig through, 15 different projects to find the task you have. So when you have that one-on-one meeting with a coworker, this view will save you so much time because you can just go through the list and talk about the most important task directly from here without having to switch through so many projects. Not only that, you can actually add shared tasks very easily. So what I like about this too is when I need to assign someone a task, right? You saw how earlier I had to go to a project, then I create a task, then assign to the person and set the due date, right? Instead, when I go to this one-on-one view, I click add shared task, I can type the task name along with the due date here. That person is automatically assigned. I'm automatically added as a follower, and then I can choose the project directly from here. Saves me a bunch of effort, especially if you're in a one-on-one meeting. So to get to this one-on-one view, you simply click on the plus here, choose Matrix, and then choose the one-on-one view and then select the person. That's all you have to do. And so if you manage multiple people, I recommend that you go in here into Matrix for Teams and add the one-on-one for each of your coworker. Now, of course, you can see that I can add additional other views too. I can embed projects inside Microsoft Teams as well. But here's another neat thing, which is if you're in a conversation with somebody inside Teams, one of the things you can do too is actually convert any Teams conversation into a Matrix task. So Matrix allows you to, if your coworker asks you, hey, could you send me a report? I don't have to open Matrix to create the task. I literally just click over here, click on the ellipsis, choose create PM item, and I can create the task and choose the appropriate project directly from here. Very, very helpful and useful, and it saves you a ton of time. And then, of course, Matrix allows you to send the task as well. When you click on this menu, you can open what's called action cards. And so you can send Protomatrix action items to your coworker directly from here. Now, there's additional integrations we have with Teams that, I won't go into here due to time. But if as you use Protomatrix more, you can explore it. But we have integrations with your meetings, where we can pull up the agenda for you. We also have integration with workflows, which means you can create automations in Protomatrix. And then we integrations with Microsoft Copilot. So if you're an enterprise organization with Microsoft, you can actually leverage Copilot to create automations within Protomatrix. So really, really neat stuff. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my presentation here. So hopefully I gave you a taste of what Protomatrix is. Now it's really up to you on how to actually use Protomatrix for your actual work. One, I think it's on you, because honestly, no matter how good of a software application we can create, it depends on whether it works for your needs and the way that you think and the way that you work. So if you have not yet signed up for Protomatrix, make sure you sign up for Protomatrix. And then if you do use Teams and Outlook, definitely install the application. The second thing is, I would say that you should create at least 3 projects. A personal priority project, which is where you track all the tasks that you have to do, right? So then you know what are the things that you should work on at any point in time. And then a share team priorities that you share with your entire team. So that could be, 3 people, that could be 10 people. But the whole idea is that when you guys are in that office, right, you're able to project Protomatrix on the big screen and everyone can look at it and have a complete understanding of what are the priorities within the Protomatrix. And then thirdly, I think that you should go and create a project for key initiatives. So they could be, improving operational efficiency for this quarter, or hitting some marketing or sales milestone, or whatever it is. The reason you want to do that is because those are probably really important tasks. And so by tracking them in Protomatrix, you can ensure that it's actually popping up to the top of your list and that you remember to work on them. I think if you want Protomatrix to be the one central place where everyone can be aligned and everyone can go to and be understand exactly what everyone's working on, then you have to put those most important tasks into the system. Then invite the appropriate team members and pitch them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. It's ironic that I have to emphasize this, because what happens is people tend to look at software as something that use their time as opposed to helping them be more productive and more effective, right? But don't forget, the point of Protomatrix is to ensure that you're communicating to everybody what your priorities are. So ironically, getting value out of Protomatrix is all about ensuring that you don't work on the wrong things and that you're actually working on the right things. And so in order to do that, you need team members on board, and then you can actually have those meaningful conversations. So make sure that they understand that as well. And actually, that's if you have problems pitching to your coworkers why you need something like Protomatrix as opposed to just another project management app or a task list, then you can reach out to us and we can give you guidance on how to pitch that. And then when you create tasks in Protomatrix, I highly recommend due dates. And make sure that you set due dates, make sure you set reminders, and make sure you put them in the appropriate quadrants. Then make sure you ruthlessly prioritize, because if you don't prioritize your task, again, if everything is in the important and urgent quadrant, then nothing is, right? That's no different than having one long to-do list. And if nothing is important and urgent, then maybe you should step back and rethink about how everything fits within the bigger picture to make sure that you're achieving your goals. Some advice: use Protomatrix to track high impact tasks initially. So if you're very new to Protomatrix and you're worried about being overwhelmed, don't track everything in it, right? Just track the things that matter. And then never forget that Protomatrix is a communication tool. And as a communication tool, what it does is it creates alignment with your manager and your team members. Make sure that everyone is using it for that purpose. to ensure that you're all on the same page. And then what I think is important too is using Matrix to manage your individual goals, your personal goals. A long time ago, more than a decade ago, Matrix started out as a software to help individuals manage their priorities. And then over time, the system evolved into helping entire organizations track their priorities. But then we never forget our roots on that individual goals. And so hopefully using Matrix to achieve some of those goals that you have. So what success should look like with Matrix is that you have one central place to track priorities, right? That's the number one use of Matrix. And then two, everyone understands and are aligned on key tasks, that repetitive procedures are templatized. Now, I didn't really go into templates, but we do have, again, a webinar dedicated to templates, so then you can actually go and build out anything that's repetitive. And so it allows you to save a ton of time on repeated tasks. And then if you have emails that you prioritize them with Matrix, and then you can delegate those emails to appropriate team members, and then you don't drop them. That's it, right? And if you're able to achieve these things, then I think you'll see a ton of value out of Matrix. All right, and with that, I end my presentation here. I'll take a look to see if there's any questions. If you have a question, please send them in the chat, and then I'll try to answer them right now. And then if not, you can also send me a message, hi at Affluence as well. Okay, I have a question. Does every team member require a license in order to receive the reminder? So the way it works with Matrix is there's several types of licenses. You can have what's called a full license, which of course allows you to use Matrix across all your devices and so forth. We have a free license, a free tier if you have less than 5 projects, 100 tasks, and 5 collaborators. So if you're just a very, very small team and you're not tracking much, all those users can actually use Matrix for free. Now, if you have a team members that do not hit that threshold and they want to get reminders, then of course they would need to actually have a Matrix license. And then lastly, we have what's called a consultant license, where if you work with a lot of external parties, you can actually get a license where the other parties can actually get access to Matrix without deep collaborations within the rest of the team. And so in that case, you can essentially share your Matrix license with other people. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to clarify. But again, if you want coworkers to have a full license of Matrix, then they do need that paid license. Are there any other questions? Fantastic. Do you think you can shoot us an okay, great. Do you think you can shoot us an email to support@affluence.com here, and then we'd be happy to help you figure out what is the best team license for you. All right. Thank you, everyone. As mentioned, this webinar is recorded, and so we'll share this with others, with everyone afterwards. Also, yeah, definitely check out our other webinars, especially on email management, especially if you're using a lot of emails and you're trying to prioritize a lot of emails, and then also on templates if you do a lot of repetitive work. Thank you for the feedback. Hopefully, you'll feel the benefit right away. Appreciate it. Thank you all. Bye-bye.